start? I think this is it. We have a lot of slides to run through this morning, so I'm going to do that quickly because what we really want is to hear from you as we've started to understand some of the problem areas that exist on our campus and dive into some of the solutions. I know all of you, but for people who are listening on Facebook, I'm Ryan McDonald. I serve on the campus task force. I'm also the chair of the stewardship team. We're holding this morning because we are in the middle, but probably really more towards the end of a capital campaign. That capital campaign has done a lot of different things to invest into our campus, but a key focus of the campaign is addressing welcome and accessibility. These are two areas that really bubbled up from the parish when we did listening sessions at the very beginning of the capital campaign. And from a financial perspective, this was the majority of the funds that were raised have really been allocated towards a series of projects that we've identified on the campus that need to be addressed to enhance our welcome and accessibility. I'm going to run through a few slides this morning that walk you through the campus. For I think all of you who are here in the room, none of these images are going to be you know this campus, and this is not a surprise, but hopefully it helps you appreciate and understand different things that are here. So we'll just run through these here. So this is such a beautiful campus. We love Christ Church because of so many things, the community of faith that we have, worshiping Jesus Christ, but we're also blessed with this really interesting and exciting architectural space. We are stewards of this as well as the parish, and I know we're all kind of conscious of that. With stewardship comes responsibility, and Bill Cross, who's worked on the campus task force with me, pulled these two images. Maybe they feel familiar to some of you, especially some of you who've worshipped in the main sanctuary at a time where you might have actually gotten wet on a rainy Sunday morning. We have replaced the roof in that building, so hopefully that is not an issue going forward. But that's part of what capital campaigns do, is they address some of the challenges within a campus. Our goal this morning in this presentation is to have you have a better understanding of what the campus task force has worked on. We are intentionally focusing this session more on where's the campus right now, with giving a hint towards where we're going. We're going to actually be holding a second adult ed in the springtime that will show you more of the plans that we have developed. We aren't sharing those this morning because they're still in process, and we actually want your feedback on them. So you will help shape some of the work that we're doing. I've already kind of hinted at this slide here, but the listening sessions that happened in early 2020, at a time we did not know the pandemic was coming, but really have informed this entire capital campaign, and especially the work of the campus task force. These are some of the key learnings. This looks like a piece of stock photography, but it's actually people from our parish here. We love God, we love one another, and we love this place. We want to engage in welcome. I've thought a lot throughout this process about the amazing adult ed series that Dr. Robin Davis led us in, really understanding both the theology of this, but also practical things that we could do and to be engaging and welcoming. And, accessibility is a key component of that. One of the interesting things about this campus that you all know is the different elevation changes, both in the exterior and the interior. And those can provide barriers to having all people participate. Bill.
I just want to launch in here with an additional word, which is something that reflects the upside down character of God's calling to us. Most places on God's green earth exist for their members or their shareholders. The church exists for its non-members. We who are a part of this community now, through Robin's education a couple of years ago, and through thinking deeply about the order that God is calling us into, need to be thinking not about us, but about people who are not yet a part of this community. And so things like signage that says, please park here, not don't park. Those kinds of things, which are not intuitive to us if we have been coming here for years, are important parts of this process. And so the mandate to be welcoming, to be accessible, to be truly invitational, as a package is what's behind this. And I hope that that will be clear through these slides and Ryan's words. But it is, in many ways, a counterintuitive thing. It's an upside-down mission relative to the world in which we live, but it is God's mission given to us, and we are so excited about that. And as another member of the campus task force, Jim Reynolds and I, under Ryan's and Posey's leadership, Abby Butt and Grace Chamora are also members of the campus task force. We are all so grateful for this opportunity to live into that to that mission that God has given us as stewards. So, end of advertisement.
That's great. That's great, Bill. I love that. It's actually a great lead-in to this wonderful quote from this person that you may not think of immediately as an Anglican sage. Winston Churchill. We shape our buildings, and afterwards our buildings shape us. I think, this campus has shaped us as a community, and the decisions that we have ahead of us around welcome, around accessibility, have the ability, can shape the future of this community. I love this quote. Okay, so here's a little bit of a great image of the original proposed drawings of the campus. For those of you who have been around here for a while, you'll see the main sanctuary there and the chapel with the parish hall behind where we're located. You'll also see the office and day school wing, but you'll also see another wing that actually connects the campus. That was actually never built.
Can you go up and really closely point, because I think it's hard
Yeah,
for people
sure.
to tell.
So here's our main sanctuary here. Here's the chapel here, and behind it is the parish hall. This is the office wing here. And then you'll see this other wing here that was never actually constructed. There were foundations that were built, but for a variety of reasons, it was never fully constructed. But that's some of the original sort of campus plan at the time where the main sanctuary was built. Bill?
I'm just going to point out two other things that are details here but are significant. One is this wing,
Yes.
which is a tiny wing, but was a part of this concept. And this tree, which many of you will recall, one thing about trees, unlike buildings, is that they grow. And this tree got to be very, very large. But in the original conception, this tree and this little breezeway created a gathering place between the two sanctuaries. and this was never built. This tree got to be so enormous that it actually blocked the entrance to the church visually from Asbury Street. And so happily it's not there anymore. But what we have now is less than perfect visual cues to say welcome and to facilitate people coming to be a part of our community, coming physically and coming in other ways, including visual ways. That accessibility is key for this. And so these two little details are relevant in terms of expressing the original intention that there be a resolution between this 1928 chapel and the rest of the campus in this place, a gathering place, which in the end really has, since 1961 when the church was built, the big church was built, that really hasn't been there. And so we hope that now we can recreate something of this intended gathering and reconciliation in this campus.
Thanks, Bill. Bill's going to continue to interject. We've worked on this presentation together this week, and he's going to continue to comment on some things just to help illuminate. Another thing I want to highlight that is here, you will see this courtyard area here. It looks quite different today because in 1999, the current courtyard was built, in part because the foundations for that wing that was never completed were removed, but also because there were some really significant drainage issues that were there, and they needed to be addressed. And they were. However, it actually created more elevation changes in that area than were originally planned. So these are just factors. It does create these wonderful gathering spaces that we enjoy as a community. So our campus task force, Bill has just mentioned the folks who are a part of it currently. David McKay, who passed away last year, a dear friend, also served on this committee with us and really had helped inform many of the things that are there. We miss him in so many ways, but as also his leadership on this group. There are three sort of principal things that are guiding our time as a campus task force. One, really making that entrance to the school wing or the Preston Cutler room wing that just easier to navigate. There are so many elevation changes inside and out, and we'll talk about those in just a moment. And then the entrances to both the chapel and the church have some key challenges, both for gathering people together, but also around accessibility and the experience of worship as a community. And then, as Bill's already alluded to, and Robin Davis has actually oriented us to previously, there are all of these actually relatively inexpensive as we compare it to some of these other changes, things that we can do as a campus that really enhance features that we already have and make it much easier for people to navigate. These things include things like signage, lighting, and like clear pathways to get from A to B. A funny story on that, the very first time I met the architect that we've engaged, Edu, who I'll talk about in just a moment, was chatting with him and Bill, and I think Jim Reynolds as well, outside of the sanctuary one Sunday morning. We were in between the two services. It was this lovely young family visiting Christ Church for the first time with a baby in one of those baby car seats, which if you've ever tried to carry one of those and walk, I think she was wearing high heels, which made it particularly challenging, really, really hard. They went up to the chapel because that's where they thought they needed to go. Chapel, of course, is locked because the 8 a.m. service is over. they think they're late for some service, but actually the 10:30 service hasn't begun yet. But they had no idea, and they're, lost, thinking they're late, and it's their first time here at Christ Church. We don't want to see that happen, right? There's so many things that it takes just to get to church on a Sunday morning, and we don't want to create any barriers. Signage, lighting, clear pathways all make that process so much more easy. Landscaping, too. Edu Vivanco is the architect that we have engaged to guide us through this process. Bill, I don't know if you want to talk about Edu at all in any detail, but he's been a really great partner and guide for us. When you're looking at elevation changes, where you're looking at changes to any of the buildings, engaging an architect is going to be important to ensure that we're maintaining and enhancing the beauty of this campus. We're thinking about best practices in design, and from a cost control, that we end up with clear plans that we can get quotes on from different contractors. Edu really, I just have to say, he gets Christ Church, that we are a worshiping community. He is a believer, is connected to us in that way, but he also gets the unique architectural heritage that we've inherited as well, and he's just been a delightful partner in that.
It may be obvious that we need an architect to come up with construction drawings that are finished enough that we can get good bids on them. But the second piece of his work is important too, and that is to advise the parish. So after he makes the drawings, he's also going to stick with us so that we can review the bids responsibly and incorporate into this work the advice that he's giving about the package of things that are going to allow us to be more welcoming and more accessible, some of which are going to be more expensive than others. And we don't know how expensive all this is going to be until we get the bids back. We also don't know how much financially we have to work with, because we hope that as the parish has demonstrated its generosity to allow us to do this important work, that once those drawings are done, it may be that there will be more resources. This parish really believes in the mission to be more welcoming and accessible. It's demonstrated that, and we hope that his advice will allow us to make responsible judgments as stewards with those resources, and also give the parish a clearer sense of what it is that they're giving to. And some people have already said, once these drawings are completed, I may well want to give a second gift, which is, again, marvelous demonstration of how significant this goal of accessibility and welcome is to the members of the parish.
One other thing I'll highlight with Edu is he has a significant amount of experience working with schools as well. And so as we're thinking about the parish, we're also thinking about the day school, and even how we use the church from an educational perspective for church school and adult education. So he's really tried to think about that in our use of the parish, to spend a lot of time with Grace Chamorro, specifically thinking about the day school experience as well. Okay, so let's start on that first area, which is the Preston Cutler room and school wing entrance. Lots and lots of elevation changes there, inside and out. You know this. Okay, here's a couple pictures that are probably familiar to you. Exterior and interior. We've got so many elevation changes. It also is, I think this door here outside of the Preston Cutler room. For most of us that worship in the main sanctuary, it's kind of our de facto front door, because you might enter that door from the parking lot to use the restroom before proceeding into the sanctuary, or you might be going through that door to get your kids into church school. That's also the door to enter the church offices. So this is a door that is a heavy use door. However, if it's your first time coming to Christ Church, you might actually have a hard time finding that door as well. So hence the comment on it's confusing. And then on the interior here, we have stairs up to the sanctuary level. You enter in at the Preston Cutler room level. We also have this very temperamental lift that actually I think works best when we don't want it to work, and then doesn't work when we need it to work. Usually works when kids try to play on it and are riding on it, but when someone who actually needs it, it won't work. It also is, I don't know, if you think about you're entering into this building and first impressions, I've looked at this photo a lot, and other than seeing Bill there, there's actually not a whole lot that I love about that photo. There's a lot of things that I'm like, boy, I want to clean that up, and boy, that's kind of an eyesore, and it's just study that for a moment. Sometimes when we're familiar with places and spaces, you sort of look past the clutter, but there's a lot going on there, and I think it could be enhanced. I think actually the same is true, despite the beauty of the exterior space, there's also a lot of things that don't work. So these are really rough renderings here, but this is these are some of the ideas that we're currently working with. We're mainly talking about the problem areas today, but we do want to give you a hint of where we're going on solutions. So let me try to orient you. Here, you see now, this is the world as it is. This is the world as it might be in this second image titled Schematic Plan. You see that what we're doing is we're actually creating a very gradual ramp down from the rectory end of that parking lot towards this lower area. That requires removing stairs that are currently there. We are, in this place, adding stairs to create an easy way to access the long flight of stairs to the choir room and office wing. So this is one idea that we have. Another thing that I don't have an image for as well, but actually our current planning, I'm going to go back one image here. You can see here that there's this little sort of doorstep area. It's like a half step, which is hard to navigate. It can be a little hard to navigate even if you don't have any mobility issues. What we're actually thinking in this plan is that this whole sort of sunken courtyard area will be raised up to that level so that you could go down this ramp and very easily navigate into the church, all on the same level. The stairs that are coming from the courtyard will still remain, although we essentially lose one step because we've raised up the level. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Yeah, okay, great. We'll have a lot of time for Q&A here in a moment, but I just want to orient you to that. And when we do some questions, we can go back to some of these slides if you've got questions. Okay, let's talk about the interior now. This is, again, probably the fairly early stage, but we want to show you where we're going. Right now, we have stairs that go from where you enter up to the sanctuary level. We're proposing that we would actually either remove those stairs completely or perhaps just remove part of those stairs and add a ramp. And this ramp would actually extend slightly farther than the current stairs are, actually probably right to the edge of where this rug is. And the reason why that's the case is you need, for every help me, Posey and Bill.
Every foot an inch.
For every foot, an inch. Thank you. And so that means what, Posey, Bill?
For every foot, 10 inches.
Is it 10 inches?
Yeah, for every foot, 10 inches.
10 inches. Okay.
Of elevation.
Okay. So it's for every inch of height.
Yes.
You need a full foot of your ramp, right?
Exactly.
Right.
Okay.
Yeah.
So what that means is like the ramp has to be something like, I don't know, 25 feet or something like that, approximately. So it requires actually extending out that ramp farther than what it is currently. But it can provide a really clear way for people to easily move. And it's not a steep ramp. This is like a slow, gradual ramp up and down. And that would remove the need for this lift here. You'll see this bookcase that is there. That's an idea. That may stay. It may not. There may be actually stairs where that is. So this is where we're still fine-tuning some of the details. But the idea is to create an easy ramp from that main level of the sanctuary down to the Preston Cutler room, which we use for gatherings, coffee hours, where the bathrooms are as well. So, is that clear? Where we're kind of going with that? Okay. Okay. Let's now talk about the sanctuaries that we have, both the main sanctuary in the other building and the chapel in this building. Okay. Here's again some of the problem things that are there. This is the sort of patio area outside of the main door to the sanctuary. Underneath this lovely indoor-outdoor carpet is bluestone that has been flaking for at least 10 years, maybe longer. Not a great material for changes in temperature, hard to snowblow and shovel, hard to navigate. Certainly if one has mobility issues. You also have all these different materials. You've got bluestone underneath here, you've got pink granite, you've got one kind of cement here, another kind of cement there. So all these different things coming together as well. You also have a wall here, which is not a part of the original design of the campus. So those are all these different things that are coming together here. Part of the work of the campus task force is going to be ultimately finding a vendor to repave the parking lot. And you do see here, just the patch job that has happened over a period of time in the parking lot. And that's actually probably not the worst picture of what it looks like. What's also very interesting too is that our current design, and I'll show an image around this in a minute, really prioritizes cars over pedestrians, which is really interesting. And I'll talk more about what I mean about that in a moment, but just think about that for a moment. And then, finally here we have the chapel, which is such a beautiful, like very classic, traditional, Episcopal church design. But it's actually probably the most challenging to enter right now, and is typically utilized most by members of our congregation who are senior citizens. And so that's also just something we need to work with. A lot of elevation changes there as well. Okay, so here's an aerial view of the campus. Let me orient you again, if that's okay. Here we've got the main sanctuary. Here we have the chapel and then the parish hall where we are right now. Here's the office and church school wing. Here's the rectory. And here's that courtyard with our tent that's right outside there. Okay, so that's where we are oriented to right now. And then here you have Asbury Street and then the parking lot back here. So if you were turning in from downtown Hamilton, you might turn in here. You could either turn through this circular drive or drive back towards the parking lot, and you could exit here. What happens on a Sunday morning when Carolyn and I pulled in this morning? There are quite a few cars actually blocking the view of the church and almost sort of barricading us from the community. There's also not any pedestrian way to access the church from the community, which is just sort of interesting. It's one of the challenges about that driveway that is there. We do have some accessible parking spaces that are here that are clearly marked. I believe there's 1 or 2 accessible spaces right here.
One's marked, there's room for 2.
Okay, 1 is marked, there's room for 2 here. There are also some other, parking spaces that are sort of easier to access, either the chapel or the main sanctuary in this half-circle drive. You may or may not be able to get them because they, when you pull in if you need them. Most of our parking is back there. Still.
One other thing I might just point out here is that partly because of our sort of half-hearted commitment to one-way directions for cars, this roadway is wide enough for cars going both ways. There was at one point, maybe there still is, a sign that says that this is one way, but the fact that I don't know whether it's there or not suggests that maybe it's not very visible.
It's still there. It definitely is still there.
Is it still there? Okay.
Yeah.
Well,
it's right at the out further.
okay.
It turns you out to the right there.
So I have myself, and I've seen a lot of other people use this not as a one-way street, but as a two-way street, and it's wide enough to give us visual cues to use it as a two-way street. But if we had ample and clear signage that said this is one way, we would be able perhaps to recapture more of a sense of this being a pedestrian-friendly, neighbor-inviting place. So that's just an opportunity, and it may not be very expensive to put a sign in, or a series of signs that make things clearer. Striping of parking lots, striping of spaces, but these things can make a big difference.
It's great. For sake of time, I'm not going to go into, obviously, the experience of someone who drives in or walks in from the community and where do they go, but I think we've already mentioned it can be very, very confusing. So we'll leave it at that. I actually want to talk about a word that I've learned in 2021 called parvis. And it's actually from a Latin word that means paradise. And the definition in a noun form is an enclosed area in front of a cathedral or church. And so you see Notre Dame there with this, this area in front of it there. And there's a lot of reasons on the sort of the history of that. Some of it was a gathering space. Some of it was actually a space to protect the church from sort of encroaching urbanization as well. Like you actually need some space to allow the building to breathe. Obviously less of an issue or application in a suburban area like Hamilton and Wenham, but still, this is just to introduce you to this word that I've learned recently. So it's a very ancient context, foretaste of the paradise that is found in worship. So there's some theological connotation. You see two examples of this here from France and Malta, with really beautiful and actually very intricate designed spaces outside of buildings. So just think about that here for a moment. So one of the suggestions that Edu has challenged us with is taking in for a moment this point of view between these two different buildings. We have the sanctuary here and the chapel here. This is This area is that viewpoint where you see these two different buildings come together. And I would invite you at some point to actually stand in this space because it's really, really cool. Because you see all of these things line up and you get this a sense of how these buildings fit together. Even these two wings here, sort of adding some symmetry as well. It's really, really lovely. So what Edu has challenged us to think about is this idea of a gathering space that is actually located right there. Let me show you another image of what that could look like. Now this is just a very rough rendering, but allows sort of human-sized people in that space. And you see here, there are two walkways. One from the driveway, another that is leading right out to Asbury Street. Now let's look at this just from an aerial perspective as well. So what you see these two walkways, one out to Asbury Street, one out to this driveway. This is actually the end view of each of those pathways. So you see what are you walking towards if you're walking away from the church. What's very beautiful is he has actually formed a cross here with these two red lines that meet. So this is an idea that Edu has proposed, which actually creates a gathering space for our campus. As Edu has really understood the campus and the architecture, he's also said there's some really interesting patterns that start to emerge in this the underlying architecture, both of the church and the chapel as well. So these are some ideas that he is starting to introduce and we're thinking about that creates some very interesting spaces for gathering as well. I'm going to talk in just a moment about how that idea might change the flow of car traffic. Obviously, these red lines create pedestrian walkways. We'll talk in just a moment about the flow of traffic. Okay, circulation, signage, and more. Okay, so here we go. Here's our traffic slide. You see this harvest area here. You see these walkways here. Now, in this plan, the circular driveway that is here is removed. Okay, so a car entering the campus would actually proceed down here, down to the parking lot in the back, and could circulate out here. These actually become better marked one-way driveways here. We also add a minimum of 6 spaces here that would be essentially right out there if you're in the room with us and you can follow what I'm talking about. Many of these would be accessible parking spots, as well as probably some spots that would be marked for seniors during services and things like that. Maybe not all accessible, but still be able to have easy access. You'd have clear walkway then into both of our spaces of worship.
And parish day school drop-off.
And yes, that would also enhance the parish day school drop-off. There also would be a series of parking spaces that would not be marked for accessibility, but we actually do have the room for that here along the driveway. Now, I know there's cars parked out there right now. Right now they're sort of parked on the grass and in the mud, which depending on the shoes you're wearing might be a good or bad idea, I don't know. With this, these actually become paved spots, which become a little easier to get in and out of for folks. This is the area just to highlight where that ramp is, that yellow line, just to give you a sense on scale when you're looking at it from an aerial view. It's so fun to pull up images on like Google Maps and to look at. If you haven't done that with your property where you live, it's really fun. But this just starts to give you a little bit of sense on what the new circulation might look like here. We're still, obviously, the majority of our parking is in the back, in the parking lot that's here. But we've prioritized this new parking area that's not front and center to the church, but it's still just as easily accessible into both of those buildings for the church and the day school. Moving quickly here because we want to leave some time for Q&A. This is probably, in addition to signage, the cheapest, sort of in terms of cost, dollar amount, cost is lighting and signage. These are the things that are super high impact, but really, really important. You'll see a beautiful image. Probably, Bill, is that your photo or David Moran?
David Moran.
David Moran. Okay, beautiful lit, photo of the main sanctuary with the Gabriel Loire window there in the center. You also see a church in Europe. These are also Gabriel Loire windows as well, and these are beautifully lit. There's some very nice exterior lighting that's happening here, but there's also interior lighting that is on in the night, which allows this beautiful building to be lit up. And that would be something where we could think about, obviously adding better exterior lighting, but also better utilizing our existing interior lighting, even when the church is not in use, to show this building as a dynamic place of worship, but also highlight the beauty of this architecture to the broader community. Bill?
So, Gabriel Loire was one of the greatest masters of stained glass in the whole 20th century. And he did work all over the world, from South Africa to France to the United States.
Even South Hamilton, Massachusetts.
Even
Bill.
South Hamilton,
Yeah.
Massachusetts.
Yeah.
And much of that work was for churches, but as an example, he did the Bacardi headquarters in Puerto Rico with amazing stained glass. One of the things that is distinctive about his stained glass, unlike most stained glass over history, is that it was designed in very close collaboration with architects, which we certainly see here, and designed to be seen 24/7. So this church is beautifully lit, but also from the outside, but it's also beautifully lit from the inside. His work was designed for that purpose, to be compelling and invitational while being inside those spaces and looking at them from the outside. Whether those were churches or in Japan, he has a tower which is in some kind of a secular amusement park type place. There's a Dallas secular chapel, non-denominational chapel. These are places that are meant to be compelling from inside and outside, and we have an opportunity to do that over the last 60 years we've never capitalized on. This is an opportunity now to do what this church in Europe has done.
That's great, Bill. We're not going to really spend any time this morning on signage because obviously developing a plan around signage needs to come after we finalize plans for what the new campus layout will be. But just to highlight how important that is, both to ensure that people are proceeding in the ways that we would like them to go, cars going the right direction on a driveway, but also so that someone who is visiting Christ Church for the first time or the second time knows where he needs to go around the campus. We will come back to that. And I just love this final sort of word from Bill. In all these matters, we seek to be good stewards of what God has given us at Christ Church, that by the power of the Holy Spirit, we may share his generous gifts. I love that. Let me read that one more time. In all these matters, we seek to be good stewards of what God has given us at Christ Church, that by the power of the Holy Spirit, we may share his generous gifts. Being a part of the campus task force, being a part of the capital campaign, I mean, this is holy work. There's nothing that we do that God does not cry over and say, mine, right? And these decisions, both the large ones and the small ones, are really important. So I'd like to open up to questions now. Again, we'll have more opportunity to talk and dialogue over the coming months, but we really would love to hear from you. And I'm happy to navigate back to some additional slides. I just want to point out we have some experts in the room. Jim Reynolds on the Campus Task Force, Bill Cross, Posey Mansfield. All of us are a part of this group. There's also a lot of wonderful collective wisdom in this room as well. So, folks, what do you want to? What are your questions? Penny.
Well, mine's rather basic one. I think it's wonderful what you presented.
Yes.
Have you been given any estimate of the cost of what you presented?
We have certainly paid attention to the way in which the proposed changes affect other things. So, for example, how do we think about, the smallest amount of impact on spaces, which obviously minimize costs. Until we have detailed architectural renderings, we can't actually bring those to get realistic bids. So I think we have some very, very broad ballparks, but there's a lot of variance until you actually have detailed architectural drawings, which is why you don't want to start projects like these without an architect engaged. Yeah. Jack.
Oh, I want to thank you and Bill and the committee here for fine work. I have, I guess, a question and some concerns about the harvest and the sidewalk proposal at a number of different levels, both, I guess, environmental impact and symbolism. But in terms of the environment, my question is, more of the surface over here will be paved over, and the question is, are we giving up green space or grass cover? Because as I thought about this, it seems that our present structures, both the chapel and the big church, they are very organically connected to the earth and to the environment. You've got fieldstone, which literally rises organically from our locality. And so if you're going to pave over, are you giving up grass? And in terms of the ability of our property to absorb rainwater and return it to the aquifer, where's that water going to run? Is it going to run into the sewer, into the Ipswich River, or whatnot? So are we giving up green space? And I mean, there are issues of carbon sequestration there as well. So how much square footage? And then in terms of aesthetics and symbolism, I'm all in favor of the cross, but to me it seems a little bit strange here that the cross becomes a walkover. It becomes a pathway, and typically in our liturgy we want to lift up the cross, not walk on the cross. And also, it seems to me that paradise is not a walkthrough, it is a destination. Okay, so just in terms of, and a lot of straight lines here, curves I think are more aesthetic in terms of driveways and pathways and so forth. So I have just multiple reactions, quite mixed to this proposal.
I think that's really helpful, and it's one of the reasons actually why we want to hear from people and sort of hear some of the reactions. Phil?
Two things I would say. First of all, our intention is for the number of square feet of green space to increase, not decrease. And we think we're on a good path to do that, to have more permeable surface, which is more organically connecting buildings, land, and people to this place. So that's point number one. Point number two is this curve on the Pentecost window facade of the church is really powerful, but has, for a variety of reasons and in a variety of ways, been understated and less appreciated over the years than it could be. The parvis is, as we're currently considering it through this very schematic plan at this stage, the parvis is intended to harmonize with that curve and clarify the power of the Holy Spirit bursting into the sanctuary and welcoming everyone into this community. So it is intended to be a curve that continues from the curve of the big sanctuary. One thing that we are thinking about is introducing a new material in the walkways, which will invite people in through the fact that it is new and is familiar, namely brick. We don't have brick anywhere here, but we think that having a brick pathway which lifts high across, but not in a way that is off-putting, but in fact is invitational, bringing people in through a material that they see elsewhere in New England, and which is warm, and which makes it clear that this place is for them. We think that may be very helpful. It's all early days, but we think that the two principles here of lifting high the cross, affirming the theological bedrock of this parish, expressed already through its architecture, and also affirming the harmony between buildings, people, and the earth on which we are living. That these are fundamental precepts that should undergird our work and which will be welcoming to our neighbors. That's the hope.
One other just comment on this that's really interesting that I've sort of learned in spending time with Edu and the campus task force. There's things sometimes where you say, oh wow, that really works, but I don't know why. Why does it work? One of the interesting things is the width of the chapel is 22 feet, correct, Bill?
Yeah.
And then the width of the main sanctuary is 22 times 2, which is 44 feet. Which is very interesting. So they've played on that multiple of 22 here in these two buildings, and then the diameter of this circle is 44 feet. So the same width as the chapel. Now, or as the sanctuary. Whether that becomes the final dimensions of this or not, I'm not sure. But I think one of the things that Edu has highlighted as a good architect is understanding the multiples that you have there in the different buildings, and just being sensitive to that.
And recognizing there is an underlying existing order which is intended to visually communicate the harmony that God intends for us within which we live. And I think there are multiple hands here. Yes.
One fact you might want to consider in the back of your mind when you're redesigning the parking lot is that some people estimate by 2030, 90% of the cars driving in here will be electric. And I appreciate very much that keeping an eye on costs is the easiest thing for people like me and I to do is throw out bells and whistles, but it might be cost effective to at least, when you're thinking of redesigning the parking lot, at least have a plan of where the charging station might go, because it may not be too long where it's some kind of requirement. And also, maybe there's, I just installed a charging station at my house. I was able to get a full tax deduction. There's a lot
That's super helpful, Karen, and not something that has been. I mean, we're not quite to that level of detail yet in our planning, but I think, really important for us to keep in mind. Thank you.
Do you want to restate that just for folks?
Oh yeah, sure. So the suggestion coming from Karen was just that we explore, the possibility of charging stations either to add now or setting that up for a future date for us, just given that being, the significant trajectory that we're on. I don't know who is next. Maybe Claire. Okay, go ahead.
Well, I have a really radical suggestion.
Great, we're here for it, Claire. Bring it on.
I'm a relatively new member, and one of the things that sort of impressed me is that if you come to Christ Church during the week or whatever,
Yes.
it's hard to find the administrative offices.
Yes.
Has anybody ever considered, don't get too hysterical, eliminating the chapel, having that administrative offices?
No.
And then having everybody go to the church, because you just don't have any sense of anybody being here other than a Sunday service.
Yeah. The point that you raise. Go ahead, Claire. Sorry.
And I know as a refugee from St. John's, one of the things that was always wonderful in that addition was that you could stop by any time during the day, during the week, and somebody was always there. Hi, come in, have a cup of coffee, whatever. And I think, don't get me wrong, I think Christ Church is fabulous. I love Sunday. It's getting to be my favorite day of the week, but and I think that's something that you might just think about.
That's great. So the suggestion from Claire was just that we think about more easily accessible church office.
Right.
And it is something that it has come into our conversation as well. I think there's a number of different ways to approach this. One would just be on the signage side. Do people know where the current church office is, right? I think that obviously is the easiest thing. But I think there are questions about that, and they were raised actually not so much about the church office in particular, but even other spaces around. Are we using one space in the most effective way? No one has suggested at this point changing the use of the chapel, and I as someone who, I don't know if we're ready to go there yet, but I think your point is a good one. How do people find the church office? How do people be able to access that? And it's great. I think. Kristen, I think you're next, and then I'm going to come back to you, Robin, and then Kay. Is that okay? And maybe Jim. Sorry. Yeah, go ahead.
Thanks. Yeah, just two comments. Thanks for the presentation. This is great. As a former architect myself, we love to draw straight lines. I might suggest for the front harvest area. Finding a landscape architect to take a look and maybe come up with some options may offer some different, because that's a really important space, obviously, in this plan. Very important. So that's one idea. And I think that the emphasis on where do you go when you get here is just hugely important, because we're relatively new and we went through that same where do we go? When we came to the chapel today, we were like, wait, is it locked? Oh no, we have to turn it. Okay. So it's kind of like the New England thing of well, you should just know. And it's nice I like the process.
Yes. Yeah, that's great. So two comments from Kristen. One, just making sure that the plans really engage landscape architecture in that really great point. And then also, just your own experience coming into the church, echoing, I think, maybe the story I shared earlier. Robin, I think you're next.
Okay, so
thinking about accessibility.
Yep.
Because I thought that was one of the driving forces behind,
It is.
dig deep into your pockets. Picture Lurleen or Bob Friedrich coming Sunday morning. How are they better off with your plan than what we've got now?
A couple different things, and Bill and Posey, I'd appreciate to hear from you as well. I mean, one, I think we have probably an increased number of accessible spots in this plan, so that would be one. We would be addressing a number of elevation changes on the interior and the exterior in this plan as well. There also would be a gathering space that is all kind of at one level. Posey.
Where would they park? Where would Sandy park?
Yep.
And then how far would Bob have to walk with his walker to get into the church?
Yep.
So I think a lot about this every day because my mother is at the very end of her life. And I think all of us on the task force have been thinking about this in part because we've been blessed to have both David McKay and Posey be thoughtful, articulate advocates for physical accessibility. Accessibility isn't just physical, but it is physical. And this parking here is, if you measure the number of feet, this is the shortest distance into the buildings and should be the first place to go for people who are like Bob and Sandy Friedrich or my mother, very sensitive to the number of feet between their car and the church entrance. And I think clarifying that when you're coming to church here, the best place to park is here, and that this is going to be at grade or close to at grade, with this being as physically accessible as possible. That's the principal way in which this is better for Bob and Sandy than our current situation. It is true that this is not right here. It's a little bit farther.
It's a lot farther.
It's farther. But at the same time, if we do what we're intending to do, the accessibility will be increased both for the Friedrichs and for everybody. And we're going to make sure that everyone's interests are observed here, and clear signage about the prioritization of parking and the circulation will, I think, help them quite a bit.
Posey, anything else you would add to that? Because you've been just such a great guide, for us.
Well, I think in answer to that, I think if you park where Bill suggests and come in the back way, there's going to be a grading so a wheelchair or a walker or a rollator can get down, and then we're eliminating that half step to get into the back part of through the Preston Cutler room door, and then you've got the ramp going into the sanctuary.
Well, this is a man who can, if he walks 5 steps, he has to sit and rest. And I don't think they'll come. I just don't think they'll come. I don't know. I don't. Anyway.
I mean, what's happened with my mom is that she would like to be able to use her walker, but when she can only do 5 steps with her walker, a wheelchair becomes necessary.
Right.
And I wish that weren't the case, but it becomes the case with many of us. And I think we've got to anticipate that and make it as welcoming and accessible in all respects as possible for people throughout their lives. And that's what we're really trying to do. We are keenly aware of this as a part of our mission.
Right, and I think that's a good point. I think at some point Bob probably will require And I
Well,
think,
he does now. He
well,
does now.
then he wouldn't be walking 5 steps, and having to stop. And that's, different mobility devices do different things. This would eliminate his need to walk and stop, and there is a bathroom that's accessible near the front of Cutler where the bathrooms are.
Are you making the church ADA compliant? Is it,
Yes.
so will they be able to push a button and open the door, or?
I'm not sure
I
about
mean,
that.
Yeah, I mean, I think what we're doing with this whole campaign is we are prioritizing some of the problem areas. We're not solving all of our, challenges around this currently. We're chipping away at a long list of things that exist on this campus. And so we're really trying to prioritize some of the key things that are challenges. Kate, I want to leave time for your question here.
I'm probably going to defer to Jim.
Okay.
I was going to say that I really like the Parvis idea, but I think it needs development.
Yep.
And I also, I won't talk about that, but also I wondered if the committee was considering naming any space for Dave McCain. He has really triggered concern about the whole accessibility issue, and I would love to see how hard.
Great idea. So it's two comments from Kay. One, just that the Parvis area does need more refinement as a plan. I agree with that. And then also just that we consider, maybe perhaps some naming opportunities for David McKay. Jim, did you have anything else?
No,
Okay.
I was a very good presentation, and thank you.
Thanks everyone.